Hi, and welcome to the Realtor Diaries podcast. I'm Kim Jacobi, and with me, Elijah McGowan. We're with Century 21 and the Jacobi team.
If you would like to hear your story on the Realtor Diaries, you can message us on the Realtor Diaries podcast at gmail.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Now, today's episode, we have titled, So You Want to Buy a Rental? And so we're going to be talking about basically like getting into becoming an investor and a landlord potentially.
Yep.
Of course, nowadays they call it housing provider.
It's true. Terms have changed. There's no more master bedrooms.
Right. And we have a disclaimer first.
Yes. So we're going to give you advice to the best of our expertise, but please make sure you do your own research and just keep in mind that any investment has risk and our expertise may not necessarily be your experience.
And we are not lawyers, and so any kind of legal advice, you will want to consult with a real estate attorney.
Exactly. So,
Now, with that being said,
I have never been
Story
a housing provider,
yes.
but I have been a renter a couple times. I think 3 times. The first one was back in my hometown of Ukiah, and then twice here in Chico. I've moved once in Chico. One in Ukiah was a little more of a handshake deal.
Yeah. You didn't have a lease?
I had a lease.
Oh, okay.
It was a little lax, and I never got my security deposit back. Yeah, no, that was the whole thing. It was interesting because it was my first time ever interacting with like housing on my own, like getting out of the house, all that thing. But it wasn't until I started taking real estate classes that I was like, this situation isn't probably ideal for either me or the housing provider, landlord. But, you know, it ended up being okay. It wasn't a huge security deposit, but I lived basically in it was like a brick oven. The house was so hot in the summer. Yeah, it was COVID. Like, I just moved out of my mom's house.
Could have cooked pizza in there?
Oh, gosh, I was the pizza.
Yes.
But no, that first experience definitely exposed me to the, like, world of housing. It was, like, my first ever, like, toe dipped into that. Like, it's crazy because that rental lease was basically passed on to me by a family friend, and then I passed it on to another family friend.
That's so small town. That's so
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It did, it worked out really well.
Yep. Now, in your Chico, you've lived in 2 different rentals in Chico?
I lived in 3.
3.
Yeah, you say me talking about it. Rebecca.
Yeah. Did they have a landscaper, or did you do the mow the lawn and stuff? Or?
So the first one was a house, and oh my gosh, it's so crazy how differently they can be structured now that I think about it. They were responsible for the front yard. They wanted us to mow the backyard.
Oh.
They had a property management company, so it was just like a standard layout that they did for the owner. And yeah, just a 3-bed, 2-bath house, and it was just a year lease, but it was cool.
And did your rent include like water and garbage? You
Maybe
probably might not remember.
not power, definitely not in California. That wouldn't.
No, not Eugenie.
That won't happen.
I know typically like
I think they paid water and garbage.
in the Chico area, a lot of times the rent will include water and garbage, and the thinking behind that from the landlord's perspective, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we should be saying housing provider, is let's say the tenants decide not to pay the water bill, all the landscaping is going to die,
Yep.
right? And then let's say they decide not to pay for garbage, there's going to be garbage piled up.
Oh, and so it's like a self-protection.
Yeah, so oftentimes the housing providers will pay for water and garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like oftentimes they'll pay for landscaping too, especially in the front.
Yeah,
'Cause
especially.
you want that curb appeal, and you don't want anybody turning you in. And of course, now Butte County has the vegetation requirements,
Oh, really?
for fire.
Oh, yes.
Defensible space.
Yes.
So
It's definitely better to have you take care of your responsibilities to the state.
exactly, because you do own the property. So
That's the truth. So you're the one on the hook.
yeah. So any other stories about being a renter?
Oh my gosh. Not really. I've had a pretty good experience renting overall. I mean, everyone can talk about how crazy power costs are if you actually want to have a cool house all the time, and like how tough it can be. But you know, it wasn't too bad. Like it was normal. I would have, you know, rather owned, but you know, it was hard during COVID. It was like interest rates super low, and I had just entered the workforce, so I thought it wasn't going to happen, you know. But and so
rent yourself up.
So renting was a great option.
Yeah. Remember, the average first-time home buyer in California is 40. So
exactly.
Still got time.
So I'll give it another 15 years.
Yeah. So for this episode, I guess what makes sense for my stories is to share about the time that my husband and I bought a rental property. So it was 2 little homes on one lot. Here we go. Yes. And they were so cute, these little homes. I think they were like 600 square feet each, you know, right around there. Just easy, tidy. They both had their own private yards. And the rent for both just covered the mortgage.
Okay.
And so we wanted to do our own landscaping so that we didn't have to pay, you know. So yes, it cost us in time and energy, but it didn't cost us financially to hire landscapers.
Like as a business decision, that can be pretty good. Like sweat equity is equity.
Yeah. So we, you know, and we got the kids involved, and
yeah.
But man, I tell you, once spring hit, it was like everything started growing because there's 2 yards. Well, the front yard and the backyard in the one unit, and then the back unit had this huge front yard. And I'm not talking about just mowing the grass. I'm talking about all the bushes and the huge fence of ivy that would literally grow like 6 feet in
really?
Multiple trees. It like you don't realize how much work it is
until you're working
weekend after weekend after weekend. Then you have to come home and do your own landscaping.
Yeah, because you guys had bought a house relatively recently before that.
Yeah. So it just ended up becoming a huge burden, just that part of it.
Yeah.
And then luckily nothing big and expensive happened while we owned it. But like eventually we were going to need to replace windows. We had to replace 2 windows on the back house.
I was going to say, when you said the rent covered just the mortgage, that was like red flag.
Yeah.
I was like, Kim,
I know.
You're a real estate agent. What's going on?
We were thinking as a long-term investment, it was killer.
Yeah.
Because like 1 bedroom, 1 bath houses, for the square footage, it's the highest rent you can get per square foot.
Exactly. It like efficiency.
Yeah, and often those tenants will stay for over a decade.
Really? For 1 bed, 1 bath? Mm-hmm. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. As long as it's a professional or like so we're not in school. If it's a student, then they're going to be
that's turnover.
Moving. Yeah, but
a little bit of different profile.
Yes, for sure. And then the other thing was our property was still on septic. And it needed to be tied into city sewer, which that was going to be a huge cost. 2 properties connected to city sewers. We were looking at about $25,000 for that one. Oof. Yeah.
That's a tough one.
I know. And so we're like, oh, we'll save up for it over the time because septic, we weren't having any problems.
Yep.
And, you know, with 1 person living in each house, the septic was likely to keep lasting a really long time. But
you were coming upon like a requirement of needing to tie in, or just like whenever the septic
the requirement was once septic goes bad, you can't fix it, you gotta connect to sewer.
Gotcha.
So we were kind of gambling that septic was going to be fine for a long time.
Yep.
So anyways
so when you took things like into the long view with the rents only covering the mortgage, you were like looking at like you'd gain on probably some equity.
Sure.
And if you like did upkeep and upgrades, like they would cost you some money, but like over time they probably would have paid off.
And then once they were paid off, then that would be a monthly income for us.
Exactly.
Which, you know, as a real estate agent, we are in business for ourselves.
Yeah.
How are we going to retire? We don't have a pension. And so that was something we were thinking about for long term. Was, okay, these rents can be part of our retirement.
Yeah, but then, shoot, City of Trees got you.
Yeah, then we ended up financially just needing to sell the properties a couple of years later. But it was an interesting experience. Honestly, I think I'm the dreamer
Yeah.
of the two. Well, Emmett's a dreamer too, but I'll kind of be like, oh, it's gonna be wonderful, and the houses were so cute, but Emmett's the one going and doing the yard work every weekend, you know, and I know, and so I think it just gave both of us this like reality shock, and it's just funny because we're realtors, like we should have quote unquote known better or realized more, I think, than the average person.
Yeah.
But until you actually own a property and you're managing it, you don't know.
Yeah, I really recently heard a story. I can't remember who it was from, which is bad on me. But she said like she had just like made her first like bunch of money, and someone came to her and was like, "Hey, do you want to try real estate investing? Like all this stuff." And like she had property management lined up and was gonna get a like kind of a fixer upper and hire people to fix it. And like at the end of the day, it cost her money because like she didn't know anything.
Yep.
She didn't know that they could get dropped by a property management and have to manage it themselves. Like wasn't a real estate professional at all.
Yeah.
And so like you can't know until you know. And
Yeah.
you can learn from experienced people, but experience is the teacher.
Right. I mean, honestly, like even if you were to buy a brand new house from a developer and make that your rental, there's still going to be things that come up that you have to deal with. So and it's not like we didn't know that, you know, we knew that we were going to spend out of pocket for maintenance things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our time and energy for the landscaping. But
are you glad you did it?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Sure. I think that's the important part, at least. I mean, you know, I'm me.
Yeah. I'm really, really sad that we had to sell them, though, because I was secretly envisioning us as little old people living in one of them. They were the cutest little gingerbread houses.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, before you start on your adventure, I think you should hear from our guests who have a lot of insight into this whole world of owning and renting out real estate.
That's right. I'd like to welcome our guest to the podcast today. This is Jennifer Morris. She is with the North Valley Property Owners Association, which is a nonprofit here in Chico, California, that helps people who own rental properties. There's just a wealth of resources on their website and things that they provide for the members of the association. Jennifer's been with this association for 18 years. So
nice.
Welcome. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So the topic of this podcast is, so you want to buy a rental? You know, it's like there's a lot to consider if you're going to get into being an investor, especially if you're thinking about just managing it yourself. So then you can bring those dollars in, you know, and not have to pay a property manager. But there are a lot of laws and things that can really get a person in trouble. And in fact, aren't property management issues like one of the number one things that they see and have lawsuits?
Yeah, I would imagine that that's probably a heavily regulated area. We're in California, and I'm not an attorney, but yeah, you definitely need to know a little bit of guidance going through there just to make you feel at ease and like save you some time and headaches and obviously some money down the road if cutting corners sometimes doesn't always work. So
yeah,
it's similar to our jobs where, you know, it's not legal advice, but, you know, we're in the industry so deeply that, you know, or at least a good place to start. And then if we reach a point where it's like, this is a lot more nuanced, you might need an attorney. And so, you know, I think we'll start here with a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of dive in, Emmett, my husband and I are a real estate team here along with Elijah. And a couple of years ago, Emmett and I dove into the world of investing, and we bought ourselves a little investment property and in Chico, and we joined the North Valley Property Owners Association because just all the forms were there. We could do our background check. We had you to call for questions. And it was just a really invaluable service that you guys provided for us. So when we thought of this episode topic, it was like, let's have Jennifer on because, so talk to us a little bit about maybe, let's say I walk into your association office, I'm off the street, and I go, hey, I'm thinking about getting into buying investment properties and managing them myself.
I have kind of a pre-question.
Oh, 3 questions.
So do people just walk in? Like, okay, like people walk in to learn.
They do.
And then do you find that usually they own a home and they're like, well, I kind of want to invest more, or kind of a mix?
Unfortunately, we kind of run into some people a little bit after they've already gone down the road. What they have a little bit of an issue, and now they're like, what do I do now? And so if we can catch them before, that's awesome, because then they're not having to, most likely they're needing a little guidance of perhaps doing an eviction with an attorney, which we are. And so there's some steps that we can get them to some of that process, but they're going to eventually have to hire that attorney outside of our organization. But yeah, we'd love to get to them do a little pre-educating.
Yeah.
We have some people that do join ahead of time, and because they need to know the information before they get into it, which I love. I wish a lot of people would do that.
The wish of every professional that you'll come to me before you have a problem.
But yeah.
Yeah, so getting that education just makes you feel a little bit more at ease with going out there and showing your home and knowing like what you can say and what you can't say.
Okay.
And I always just caution the members, if you get asked a question that feels a little bit tricky, a little sticky, just say, I'm not really sure. Let me consider that, or let me take a second to think about it. And then they'll call me up, Jennifer, or I'll be like, consult with each other, because we do a lot of marriage family counseling sessions too. We go. But no, but they bounce in about audio where, well, my husband wants to do this, but my wife wants to do this. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, how about we have a meeting together in sense? Yeah. We'll try to figure out like how we can get this together. So, but yeah, if somebody came in off the street, I would say, it can be an overwhelming process, trying to figure out what you can do. And a lot of people aren't in the position of deciding right now, I'm going to be an investor. Sometimes maybe they have already own a home, and now they're in a position where they have to go out of town for work, or they are now blended their families, and one of them would like to move in with the other one, and now they have a house that they're thinking, well, the market's not really in the right condition. Let me try to rent it, but what do I need to know before I do that? And so it's a good idea, because like you said, we do have the forms library that has about 100 different specific forms. And I do want to preface that we're in northeastern California, so that changes a lot of things, because we're not in some of those pockets of the state which have local jurisdictions that have stricter regulations on them.
Yeah.
So knowing this area, I can kind of guide people a little bit with the forms, like you said, the credit screening reports, making sure that we don't give anybody any clues about the pricing, because that could get our association in trouble, of course. But just giving them some direction of like where they might look for marketing, or where people might list the properties, and kind of get some direction from there. And just that support. And I like to do it in segments where we do like, okay, where are you at? Do you currently have an existing tenant? Are you having issues with the tenant? Tell me a little bit about. And so if we can like walk through their specific scenario, then we can give a little bit of guidance, and then they realize, okay, maybe I can trust this person, and then I'll join your association. The dues are fairly low for a year. It's around $800, but that's obviously a lot less than hiring a management company. Management companies do have their role for sure. If you don't want to instantly know all the fair housing laws, or have to show your property, or screen and qualify applicants, definitely there's management companies that would be a good opportunity. I think the rule is if you're farther than 50 miles from your property, it'd be a good idea to look into a management company.
Yeah.
If there's a pipe burst and you're an hour away.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's 5 hours away.
Yeah, that's even worse.
So what do you think are maybe like the top 3 problems and issues that people who manage their own rental, let's say, do they just have 1 or 2 rentals? We're like the top 3 things they're struggling with.
I think a lot of our owners and members have a big heart, and so they instantly, somebody off the street comes to them, they don't know them, they've got a good story, and so they lead with their heart, versus some of like, not always should you make decisions with your mind, but I think it's a blend of both of them. But qualifying applicants, I think, is a big one that can help people really stay clear from some of the issues that maybe they would have seen some of those red flags before. So I think properly taking the time to qualify somebody, their urgency and their emergency doesn't have to become like your issue necessarily. When somebody comes to you and say, well, I'm living in a hotel, like, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. Like, what's the real reason for that? And today, I mean, I get it too, because you moved to the area. Like, where do you at? You have to secure housing before you even get a job. And so sometimes things don't always line up. But I think that's a bigger issue, is of just taking your time and not rushing through the process. It's not fun, knowing what you should be looking at, and can they pay their rent on time, be a good neighbor, and take care of their property. Do they make, in our area, it's pretty standard of 3 times the gross monthly income for rent, getting background and screening reports on them, because it doesn't, somebody could look great on paper and then have a lifestyle change too, and so you can't weed out all the issues that you might have. But if you slow down and you take your time through that process, then that can usually help a little bit. I've had some members that have, it's been a what do we call professional renters in our industry, where they very clearly been evicted from several homes and have no intentions of paying you rent. So they have quite the story down, and so they look for those private owners in a lot of ways, and so that's not a bad thing. I think there's a great opportunity for property management companies, but private owners don't tend to know as many of the laws as some management companies, and so they'll go after some of those members a little bit more. But so yeah, I think qualifying applicants is a big one. Understanding how to communicate with your residents while they live in the home is a big one. How to respond. There's lots of emotions that go into it, especially if it was, say, a home that you grew up in, and now you're renting it out to somebody, and maybe they're not taking care of it the way that you would like it to be taken care of. Balancing that out. And so I think our association, we are a sounding board in a lot of ways for people, because they get a chance to come in pretty heightened in emotions and really frustrated, and we're like, I'm kicking everybody out. Okay, well, let's lock this back a little bit and just see, what we can do, and understand a little bit of what's the owner's responsibility and what are the residents' responsibility, and how do they get compliant to that balance.
Trying to get to the point where everybody wants to be.
Right. So those are 2 big ones. And then you're filling out the forms correctly. That's a big one. There's some new changes with the 3-day notice to pay rent or quit in California, that you now have to include the date the notice was served and then the date the notice expires. And it can't include weekends or holidays. So there's that's new. That happened last July. And then there's some newer ones with California just passed that if you have a rental, you have to have now a working stove and a refrigerator in that unit. I think a lot of people had that, but some of them didn't. Some of them like to move in with their own refrigerator. It's pretty common, I guess, in single family homes that they bring in their own refrigerator, perhaps.
I did that when I moved to Chico. I brought my own refrigerator into the rental. And so you're saying that's become a requirement?
Yep, it just happened this year. Yeah. And they don't have to be fancy, but they do need to be working. So yeah, and we have a form for that even if a resident has theirs, then they just would check a box saying that they understand that they
Or waiving
they
that
brought
right.
they brought their refrigerator in, because now you've lived there for 5 years and it's your fridge. So but there's a form that they should fill out just to disclose it, because it falls into the habitability category now.
Yeah.
So I would say those are some of the big ones. And then the security deposit is always one.
Yep. Security deposit. What's allowed to be? What's it allowed to be used for? When should it be returned?
Yes, that was a huge portion of learning about real estate. I took a specific property management class, which is I really am fascinated by the work you do, but I've noticed that when I speak to clients or people who are wanting to get into it, they find that part so boring that they're just well, it'll get figured out. And I'm like, this is actually really, really important.
Just understanding that as soon as somebody vacates a property, they only have 21 days to account for that deposit. Now we have to include pictures at the time of move-in, pictures that move out before repairs, and pictures that move out after repairs. And that's a lot to do in 21 days. So, if you get an estimate out, that's of what that details, it still buys you a little bit more time. But a lot of people are like, well, they trashed my home and, they owe me rent and I'm not going to count it for their deposit. It's like, okay, well, you should, because there's statute of limitation in California is 4 years. And so if you don't account for that security deposit, there's potential that they could try to sue you for not only that deposit back, but up to 3 times that deposit.
Wow.
So it's a big one to follow.
4 years? Well, can you imagine, like, you thought it was done, and, like, 2 years later, somebody's like, I'm suing you.
Yep. So hold on to those. That for
That bad, you see people in there.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it can sound like a lot, but these are just some of the things that people end up having a little bit of, I don't know, it's bad luck or just not knowing, what they should have been doing. So those are some of the areas that we see the members struggling with a little bit, or potential new members coming in too. But I definitely wouldn't let it hinder you investing in the property. I think there's so much that, using it as equity lines, using it for your own home so that you're paying into yourself and not to somebody else. So it's definitely a lot of being an investor.
Yeah.
It's good.
Similarly, it's like a lot of our forums are for the outliers. It's like maybe 90% of the time things will go great and everything's good, but when it rains, it pours, let's say.
Yeah. That's for sure. So, let's see. Do you have a story? I know because of your line of work, you wouldn't be able to be specific or give names, obviously, but does any story come to mind of, 18 years is a long time.
Oh yeah, there's lots of stories. We laugh and be like, wait, we should probably sell that book of like being a landlord, or I guess that's not the proper name anymore, but being a housing provider. Yeah, I was like a provider, Yeah, there's a lot. Like, I think that something that doesn't get told often is, you're providing a critical thing in the community by being in the position of being able to invest. However, you are in that position. By providing that home, you are actually helping so much in the community, and I think that needs to get communicated a little bit more. So I love those stories. We had a lot of people that, obviously after the campfire, there was lots of different changes that were happening with people becoming, housing providers for a short term, and other people moving in with other friends so that they could rent out their home. So there's a lot of good stories out there that I'd love to tell. The bad ones stick in your brain a little bit more. So one of the more recent one, I think, obviously doing your due diligence about trying to qualify people before they move into the home and making sure you use a written rental agreement, not just a verbal one. I think that can really clear things up. We have some people that are like, we're going to, in exchange for you doing work on the property, we're going to discount rent. And so by doing some of those policies, it's not, in the spirit of it, it's good. But when it comes down to if they are not fulfilling their commitments, then I think that's where it gets kind of confusing as to, well, what was their actual rent per month, because they've only been consistently showing you that they paid X per month, So if you are committing to anything like that, that is a win-win for both of you. And again, I'm all for balancing those relationships between the housing provider and the resident, but I think it's best if you say you have a regular amount a month that you pay. I think that puts you into some protections of just making sure that it's clearly communicated. But yeah, there's, I guess the stories that we have, checked your rental properties on an annual basis at least. We have people that have, it got busy, and I understand, time goes by. It's like here I am in 18 years. We've had some members that they have a rental where weren't really getting any complaints from any neighbors or anything. They paid their rent on time. They would do drive-bys by the property. It looked to be pretty maintained from the exterior.
Some no-dos.
But they didn't go into the interior for 8 years, and that was the time that Primus lived in the home. Oh, good. And they were shocked. I think that one ended up being about a $35,000 improvement.
After moving.
So yes, and I understand 8 years. There's some time there, but we recommend doing at least an annual inspection. We don't call them annual inspections. We just call them preventative maintenance.
That's how it is used on most rental floors.
And, as long as you provide them with the written 24 hours, obviously if somebody works typically like the night shift, you'd want to do extra accommodations with them to do maybe a little bit later in the day. But clearly communicating that you want to go in to check your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors and look underneath the sinks of all of your plumbing in the unit to see, because sometimes people don't like informing you that there's an issue because then you're going to have to come in, or they think they might be responsible for that repair.
It's true.
But it's also then a date and time stamp of, well, you're complaining about maybe the M word, which is mold. Here we've been in that unit, a month ago and we didn't detect anything, or maybe 3 months ago and we didn't detect anything. Because we also recommend part of the paperwork is that they have a mold addendum that talks about how it's their responsibility to report anything to you, properly clean and ventilate everything. But like I said, residents get busy with things too. But I think some of those issues, maybe they didn't use the plumbing correctly, maybe they had an issue and they don't want to know about it. Or they put a bowl under the sink and
Yeah. And I definitely
catch it.
I know a few people in their 20s, like around my age, who like they see a problem and they're like, "Oh, I just don't want to bother anybody," or I'm just like super anxious about talking to my landlord because of what I've heard on the news, or like all these things, and they just don't have the understanding that like, hey, they're providing this for you, and there's things that they are required to do for you and things you're required to do, but it's a relationship that you have to maintain.
Right. And you're right. It does get scary because if you report something that's within your rights to do that to them, and you think, okay, well now they're gonna, raise my rent, or they're gonna ask me to move, so which, I don't know if I should say, but that's retaliatory.
Yeah, it is. Especially, it's really hard if you haven't spoken to them in 2 years. You're like, well, I don't want them to retaliate against me, and it's like, that's a way harder situation because you're buying this thing from this person on a consistent basis, and you haven't spoken with them in 2 years. You probably should have been talking to them from time to time at least.
Yes.
And especially with how technology is, a little bit easier for you can get that money, Venmo to you or Zelle.
Exactly.
Zelle, I don't remember.
Yeah, I know.
You got it right on the first one.
Okay. When you start utilizing more of that technology, it makes it where you can have less interaction. And so if you aren't going to be collecting the rent from them in person, it may not be a bad idea to have a landscaper that comes on a regular basis so they can maybe be your eyes and ears. But it's also not our job to be checking up on the residents. They're paying for privacy, and they have the rights to rent that home and live in it in the way that they feel like living in it to a certain degree, as long as it's not creating any kind of a health or safety issue. So like I said, there's a balance to everything, but making sure that I definitely encourage them to come in and check at least on a regular basis for the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors, because I don't remember the year it changed, but now smoke detectors are required in every bedroom. So when they try to stop you and say, well, don't go in that bedroom, right? Well, you got to check the smoke detector. And I gave you my word it's working. Like, do you now? I need to see it. Or so that way. And then if you find that they're hiding, the animal that you didn't know that they had, or maybe you get a little bit of, pot smell in the house. So that's another story. People have had their homes completely gutted. It doesn't happen quite as much now that marijuana has been legalized, but a lot of rental homes have been, purchased and rented by people whose only intention was to grow the marijuana, and instantly you got, walls ripped out and wires running across the line, and that
You see them.
odor is a little bit hard to get out.
It is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's into that wood.
Yes.
Just soaks in. Yeah.
And I think the other one that confuses a lot of people is the ESA, which is an emotional support animal. Yeah, companion animals, therapy animals, service animals. That's a big difference between a pet And so, people would tend to be like, no, I don't want a pet in the home because they cause a lot of damage. Totally get it. But like 80% of the population that rents or even owns homes has a pet. That's right. So by putting it, especially in your ad, it's going to already create, if I love your home and I want to rent it, then I'm going to find a way to be able to get my animal to live for. Yep. And so even if they didn't have the medical condition, then they could possibly go and try to get a healthcare provider to give them that, say, recommendation that they need the animal. Yeah. And I totally get it because most animals are our companions. That's right.
It's true. It's true.
Yes, the cats are my therapist.
Yeah, exactly. A book sit on your chest and fur, and you just feel all better. Yeah. Totally. But there are some that are true service animals, which would be a dog or a miniature horse. And so if somebody says, well, I have my service pet or something like that, and it happens to be a snake or a cat, well, that's a companion animal, but you still treat it in the same way, where you give a form with their application. It's called a request for reasonable accommodation, and they have to submit that with their application so that you can get an idea. It's always best to always work with them, give them the application, and say, let me take it into consideration. Yeah. Because if you refuse to say, no, I don't allow pets, well, you've already told them now that something that is a ADA, which is what Americans Disability Act, a law at the federal level, you've already told them that you don't comply with that. So you want to, like I said, if anything starts to feel a little tricky, sticky, just take a pause.
Yeah. We sure did. Tricky, sticky.
Yeah. So, I would say a lot of the times the members have good relationships with the residents, and I love that, because then when you say they have a hardship and their car breaks down and then somebody was sick and then they weren't working those hours, a lot of them will take the time to be like, okay, no problem, like let's work with you on the rent, or it can't pay it this time, like let's come up with a payment plan, or you know what, you've been a great tenant for the last 5 years, we're gonna wash it. I don't know, they can figure out that themselves, but that does happen. We have a lot of members that they probably are a little bit too caring, and so I have to also walk them back a little bit and be like, it's not your job to counsel them, or be their roommate, regulator,
Therapist,
servant,
housing provider.
Yeah. Well, I am so thankful that our community has the association, the North Valley Property Owners Association. I wish there was some lists that showed nationwide, associations like that in all the communities, but I think that
there is.
Is there?
Where do we find that?
Where is this website?
The National Apartment Association, and you wouldn't think to look there because not everybody has an apartment.
Yeah.
But the National Apartment Association is where I would look, and that's naahq.org. If you go there, you can find an affiliate in your state, and then from there, you could probably trickle down to the local affiliates. Okay. Our association is the Northeastern affiliate of California, but we're affiliated with the California Rental Housing Association, and that's the statewide of California, and we have about 9 affiliates all the way down from, there's one in San Diego, which they cover Riverside and San Diego, but they're called the Southern California Rental Housing Association, and so there's one in Berkeley, NorCal, so there's 9 of us in California. And then there's also direct members. So if you do own a rental property and you don't happen to have a local affiliate, there's still a chance you can be a direct member of your state association. Mm-hmm. And even though apartments may be in the name, most of the time they can still communicate to you about what the forms and education and laws are, because they're also advocating on your behalf too. So that was really good. So I'm glad you asked the question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and of course, if you're in our local area, you can look up North Valley Property Owners Association online and apply to be a member. And we highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for Yeah. It's fun, and it's nice for us to be able to get out there and get some support to people that, like I said, are really doing something that's critical for the community, and not a lot of people are in that position. So when they are and they're willing to really make those sacrifices to invest in the property and make it work, because it's a long-term investment. And we have members that have invested in their properties because they're like, when I get older, this is my retirement. Or else if I have a medical issue later on in life, I'm going to have a way to pay for that. And I was like, wow, I've never thought about investing in a property for my medical condition later in life, but I'm glad you did.
Both these we get very old, so there you go.
And healthy when you get old too, right?
Well, and some people do it to be able to leave a legacy for their children. There's a lot of reasons to invest in properties. And so on our next segment on the news, we're going to talk a little bit about what to look for when you're looking for an investment property.
Exactly. And thanks again, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
And now it's time for the news. Today's topic, of course, as you've heard so much about, rentals.
Yes. So you want to buy a rental?
And just to define what we've been talking about is pretty much the residential rental kind of definition, which is 1 to 4 units on one piece of property.
Yeah, that could be a single family home. It could be a duplex or a single family home with another little home on it.
It could be like a row of 3 or 4 townhouses.
Yep. Just anything that you're buying is 1 to 4 units total in one purchase.
Yeah, and 5+ would be commercial, which is a different ball game, let's say.
Yep. There's going to be different terms, different requirements for the loan, different interest rates, things like that.
Yeah, but for the residential 1 to 4, if you're not living in it, there are some different loan requirements. So we only have to come in with a bigger down payment than if you were going to live in the home yourself. And your interest rate, like positioning, will be different. And that's always dependent on the times that you actually do it.
Because it's an investment property. It's not your primary residence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's treated differently by the financial institution.
Yeah. And I would say typically for an investment property loan, a minimum down payment that I've heard of is 15%, often 20, sometimes 25%.
And when I've spoken to lenders, usually they say 20 because that's like a safer thing to say.
Right.
Especially for insurance reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you know if a property that's on the market for sale, if it's going to be a good investment property? Yeah, so that's kind of what we're going to jump into next. Your rent that you earn on your properties or property should cover the mortgage and your expenses. So, the insurance, if you're going to cover garbage and water, if you're going to hire landscaping, property management fees,
Property taxes.
Have a buffer for maintenance, like maybe the roof's going to need to be replaced in 5 years. So ideally, the amount that you're going to go into debt, right? And if you're going to take on a loan, and we're going to talk at the end of the podcast about some actual terminology and their definitions. But let's say that your mortgage payment from your loan is $2,000 a month. And that's your, the loan itself, then property taxes and home insurance.
Yep.
Okay. So $2,000 a month, you're going to want additional rent after that. So maybe your rent that you're bringing in should be $2,500 a month.
Yeah.
Now, that leads us to the next question. So that property that you're looking at, that you're going, ooh, would that be a good rental? Could you get $2,500 a month in rent for that? How do we know? How do you know? Well,
that one now.
There's 2 main ways to find out if the people that are in the rental market are going to be willing to pay that much money for that house.
Yep.
One way is to call up different property managers in the local area.
Yep.
And just say, I'm just curious, what a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a 2-car garage in Northeast Chico is, what are you guys getting for rent on something like that?
And just go and ask.
Maybe even go onto their website and try to find some rentals that they currently have and see what they're asking.
Yep.
And so utilizing those local property management companies, also hopping onto Zillow, onto the rent tab.
They do a pretty good job of giving you comparisons.
Yep, they do. And that'll at least give you a ballpark, but how will you actually know? Really, the only way you'll know is by putting it up for rent, putting your price on, and seeing if you get any applications.
Yeah, that would be the only real way to
That's the
know.
only real way to know.
Yep. Like the rest of it is very informed guesswork.
Yes, similar to when we choose the market value of a home that we're
Yep.
going to be listing. You can look at comparables and use that data and information.
You can only truly know what someone will pay for it once they pay for it.
That's right. That's right. So, Elijah, you want to give us some of that terminology?
Absolutely. So you've probably heard it a lot if you've been like looking up rentals, but cap rate. And so, I mean, I'm starting a little ahead of myself, but cap rate is what you're renting for minus your expenses, which hopefully you figured out by, calling people, speaking with experienced property managers, and then that divided by what you pay for the property. And so that'll give you a percentage.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your percentage return that you're getting on it.
So let's say, for example, you have a property that gets $2,000 a month in rent. So that would be the total rent for the year.
Yep.
Would be $28,000
Yep. minus
your expenses. So let's just throw out 5,000 or 10,000, we'll call it.
Yeah.
So that comes out to 28,000 minus 10,000 is 18,000. So then you'll go 18,000 divided by what you paid for it.
And what'd you pay for it? I paid
$20,000.
Hey, you made a lot of money on that one. Or like if it was like 360, I think that puts you. Dang, what am I?
Calculator.
I know that puts you at 5%. I think.
5% cap rate in our area. That's not bad.
Yeah.
6 is even better. 7 is great.
Yeah. If you get 7, you're probably looking pretty good.
Yeah.
You don't have a huge down payment.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to pencil it out before. I would pencil it out before walking the property.
Oh yeah.
Especially if it, it seems like it's in my affordability. It's like, okay, let's see how much I would make on it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I get into the mentality of it. It's like, okay, like you're taking on a bit of risk. And the risk really is in you don't know for sure how much it's going to rent for. Like you have like kind of an idea. You don't know exact expenses, but like you have to use your idea of these things to decide if you're going to take the risk on buying the property.
Yeah. So what is cash on cash return all about? What's that mean?
Cash on cash return. So that's literally cash you put in to cash you got out. And so that's different from cap rate because like you got a loan.
Right.
And
But how much cash should I put in?
I was like, your down payment, say it was 30-ish% at 100,000 on the $300,000 house.
Yeah.
And so you made 18,000 that year. So you made 18% on your cash on cash.
Right.
And so
So how long would it take us to break even? A long time.
5 or 6 years cash on cash if nothing catastrophic happens.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe that 10,000 was from something going really bad. And so other years you do better.
Right.
And you'll be able to break even in 5 years.
That's right.
There you go. That's your spread.
And then what does it mean when we hear the term debt service coverage ratio?
Now, I'm not as up on debt service coverage ratio.
I know it has to do with your loan that you're getting on the property.
Silence, because that's actually not one I put in there.
Oh, I saw it on the AI list.
Yeah, I had it. What do I have? I had net operating income, cash on cash, and cap rate. So let's do
What's
that.
your original AI list?
It's there. I just,
So go to the definitions. There,
it's at the top right there.
it was right under cash on cash.
Where would I get net operating income?
Right here.
Oh, so I did the first 3. You said 3, and I did the first 3 instead of debt service coverage ratio.
What's that say? Oh, it doesn't say the definition. Oh, right here.
This is blank a ratio. Yeah, so it's like an image, but it won't load because it was an email.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
We had a really good pause there, so we can resume whatever we want, and I'm going to look it up.
Just Google it.
Yep.
Definition of debt service coverage ratio. I have a feeling.
That's why I did the silence.
Yeah.
I was like, I could just slip it right in. Ability to use its operating income to pay all current debt obligations. Okay. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
So debt service coverage ratio. It's a good number to have because it's like your net operating income, which you use for cap rate, over total debt service on its own. And so you can actually use this up front to figure out the buffer that you were talking about. Like, okay, I can cover my mortgage with $1,800, and so rents are around $1,800, so I'm at a 1. And you're like, well, there's not really any room there for expenses. And so if rents were more like $2,200 to $1,800, then you're like, okay, I'm at what, a 1.1 up to 1.2?
Yeah, and I think that's the 1.2 is what often a lot of lenders are looking for
Okay.
in order to get that loan.
For a rental home?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
So that's a good number to use like when you're starting to figure out what your buffer will be.
Yeah. Yep. Good starting place. So before you jump into the world of becoming an investor and a housing provider, which is very exciting,
I know.
where should you be mentally and financially? Well, hopefully this podcast kind of gave you some answers to those questions.
Yes.
For sure, we think mentally you should be able to have the bandwidth to learn the laws and the paperwork that you're going to need to know to protect yourself and your tenants.
Yep. If you're not already an expert in real estate, it might be worth your time to become at least an amateur in real estate.
That's right. And now you know about the nonprofit organizations like the North Valley Property Owners Association that hopefully, if you're not in California, hopefully your state or country has something like that.
Yes.
And then financially, you're going to need the down payment and probably some kind of savings for those emergencies that might come up.
Exactly. You'll need probably a significant amount of capital just on hand to start the process.
That's right.
Yep. And that's what it takes.
Yeah, and just remember, when you go to sell an investment property that you've never lived in as your primary residence, that you're going to have to pay some capital gains if there is any.
Yes.
So if you don't take a loss on the sale, then you will be paying taxes on any gains you have because the government needs their money.
Yeah. The tax man comes.
He does. He cometh.
And so thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Realtor Diaries, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.